Grace be unto you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Our meditation today is on a few verses from the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. A friend of mine who used to raise them said, sheep are stupid. I don't care to believe that, because in the gospel and the psalm, you know who the sheep are. Well, he said, the sheep, if you had a bunch of sheep and they started running and the first one went over a cliff, to his death, the rest of them would just follow and go right over it. They wouldn't stop and say, should we really be doing this? He told me, too, that years ago when there was still a stockyard in Sioux City, they had goats trained to lead the sheep, and the sheep would just line up behind those goats, and they would follow them right to their slaughter. When I was in college, we read a book called A Nation of Sheep. And I don't remember the book, but I think the general gist of it is that we tend to follow either people or ideas, and sometimes into very disastrous situations. And maybe it is true that the nature of sheep is to be led. And the psalm starts out with an affirmation of faith. The psalmist said, the Lord is my shepherd. And is echoed by Jesus, where Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. Follow me. Follow me. Well, let's follow the shepherd through the psalm. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Oh, it's a glorious picture. Here's a lush meadow with wildflowers and a clear, clean water. The wonders of creation. Beautiful picture. It takes us back to Genesis. And remember, there was a repetitive thing in the book of Genesis. As each piece of creation started to fall together, first creating the greens, the trees, Norway pines, white pines, birch trees, and then all the different kinds of plants, the vegetables, the grains, corns, wild rice, and just a rainbow of different kind of flowers. And each time there's that repetitive statement, and God saw, it was good. It was good. Then you come to the fish, northerns and walleyes and sunfish and all the kinds of fish, and the birds, the blue herons, the mallards, the hummingbirds, the orioles, and the repetitive statement comes again, and God saw, it was good. It was good. Then you get the animals, the moose and the deer, the fox and the otters, and the repetitive statement again. God saw that it was good, so good. The still waters. It won't be long, we'll be there. Have faith. It's coming. Maybe you'll get up real early and the sun, just the sky sprayed with multiple colors. Everything is quiet. And maybe as the mist is rising in the distance off of the water, you hear the call of that Minnesota loon. And you might have taken a fishing rod along and you throw out a surface bait, and all of a sudden erupt out of engulfing the bait, a 4-pound bass dances on his tail, and you say, it's good. It's good. Life is good. God said He gave all this to us to enjoy and to be received with thanks. And He said, one other thing. He said, I want you to take good care of it. One of the translations is that we are to guard and keep it. Book of Genesis. That we are guardians, stewards, caretakers of this beautiful world. Well, how are we doing with creation care? How's it going? I'll start with the Minnesota River. The Minnesota River drains 1/3 of the state of Minnesota, travels 335 miles, empties into the Mississippi. Out of all the streams, all the rivers that enter into the Mississippi River, the Minnesota is the most polluted. Oh no, I don't want to hear this about Minnesota. Oh, 70% of the stream is unswimmable. 2 million gallons of raw sewage from various communities pumped into that river every day. We have drained a high percentage of the wetlands that purify the water, that slow the water so that we decrease flooding, recharging groundwater. And the result is an 8,000 square mile dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And those people down there that depend on that for their shrimp, for their fishing, they're not so impressed with Minnesota's creation care. We should not be sheepish about taking care of this, restoring wetlands, raising revenue to upgrade treatment plants. Well, what about our lakes? How are our lakes doing? Well, recent research shows that a lot of lakes aren't doing as well as we thought. In fact, some are in real trouble. And in one word, 2 words, what's the problem? Runoff. What comes from the land into the lakes, into the water? Well, what's happened? Well, one thing that's happened is there are twice as many people in Minnesota as there were when I started high school, twice as many people. We have 11,825 lakes that are over 10 acres in size. In 1958, the average number of cabins per mile of shoreline in Minnesota was 3. 2 years ago, it was 16. So creation care becomes more complicated. You know, if there's only 1 or 2 cabins on a lake, you could probably just pipe the toilet right into the lake. Wouldn't really have that much effect. Now, if you're swimming and you saw some toilet paper floating, you might want to go down the beach a little ways. You know, there's always some people, there's always, we know what to do. Creation care, lake associations shouldn't be sheepish about trying to encourage wise use of the shorelines and the land so that we keep those things out of our lake. You know, there's always some old crusty guy. He said, it's my property, nobody's going to tell me what I'm going to do with my property. Well, if he's really crusty, remind him that there are people here before he owned it, and there will be people here after, and the only really permanent plot of ground that he's going to have is about 6 feet by about 3 feet. Invasive species. We ought not to be sheepish about doing everything we can to keep them out of our lakes and to keep them from spreading. Zebra mussels, these Asian carp, there's a possibility if they get in our watersheds, they could drastically destroy Minnesota lakes as we know them. In Minnesota, we have 800,000 boats. If you count even those small 10-acre lakes, in the average, that means we have an average of 68 boats per lake. We use our lakes, but it means we have to be very careful. Well, the crown jewel of Minnesota, the crown jewel, there's nothing like it in all the United States, the Boundary Waters Canoe area. And they're proposing to do copper nickel mining there. Now ask me if that can be done safely. I don't know. But I do know this. We should have assurances from people besides the ones that are going to make millions of dollars off of those mines that it is a good care of the earth. And just to say that it creates jobs, that doesn't mean anything. All that means is that we're willing to destroy God's earth for the sake of temporary greed and rob our children. Oh, the psalm turns a little dark now, a little dark. There's kind of a pall the psalmist hangs over the earth. He said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. But he adds, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. That pall, that shadow comes into our living rooms every night with the news and every morning with the papers. I don't even want to see it. I don't like to see it. You see those starving children. You see that the only thing they have around their bones is the skin. They have those distended stomachs, and their teeth are sticking kind of because they've so shrunken, and sometimes there's flies crawling in and out of their eyes. I don't want to see that, Paul. I don't like to see the pictures of those terrified children in Syria huddling with their parents while the innocents are being shot and bombed with no protection at all. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see those mothers love their children like we do. I don't like that. And then suddenly it comes sometimes into our own life. I came over a hill in Georgia. There were bodies on this side, bodies on this side, bodies on the street. A girls' basketball team and a bus had run into a junk truck over the hill that was going 10 miles an hour. And suddenly, in an instant, life has changed. Life is often changed with a broken heart in just seconds. It happens in 1,000 doctors' offices across the country each week where they say, I'm sorry, the tests don't look very good. It happens in thousands of homes as there is sudden grief and hearts are broken. All of our hearts will be broken sometime in life. Sometimes those pains never really go away completely. Life might be okay. And then all of a sudden, something brings you back right into the intensity of the grief, and you're brought down deep into the valley of the shadow of death. There's all kinds of pains, all kinds of hurts. It was on an airplane this spring, coming back from Atlanta. I was reading a book on Christian art, and the fellow next to me saw it, started a conversation. He said, I was raised Lutheran. And he was a Army intelligence officer that's recently back from Afghanistan. He had been over there before, 6 years without a leave. I said, is that unusual? He said, well, it depends what you're doing. I said, what are you doing? He said, I can't tell you. He told me about his life. He said the first time I was shot was in Grenada. I had forgotten about Grenada, but he said the Navy SEALs went in before us, and he said I was in a very small group. We were to physically carry some guy out of the country. He said we carried him out, but they also carried me out because I was shot. He said the last time I was shot was in Afghanistan. He said we were on a mission that went wrong, and he said 3 of my kids were killed. He called them kids because they were probably 18, 19 years old, and he said another one was shot up pretty badly. He said I was taken to Germany and surgeries, and after 2 years I was back in Afghanistan. And he told me about the things he saw, the horrors, the destruction, the grief, the blood, the dying, the innocent children, the mourning mothers, the families. And he said, after what I've seen, either God is sleeping or he isn't. In all of the death and destruction, he had journeyed so far and deep into the valley of the shadow of death that he could no longer see the Good Shepherd or feel his presence. He said, I don't have nightmares like those with traumatic stress. He said, I don't have that. He said, my bad dreams are this. He said, I can see the chaplain and the military officer drive up in their official car, walk up those sidewalks to little white houses or apartments, and the moment they say, we regret to inform you, he said, the hearts will be on the floor. They will be numb, and that moment will be frozen in time. He says, that's what I think of when I had bad dreams, all those kids. When he was saying this, my thoughts went back to Jesus on the cross, where he was experiencing that same valley of the shadow of death, and he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why? And here it is. I'm going to say it in one sentence. Christ joins us in our death, and we join him in his resurrection. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.